While I have three different projects going on, this assessment's presentation will only focus on two of them. These aren't faked up sites. These are both live and both really out in the public. In Module 1, Sprint 8, I laid out the strategy for launching Jody's book, Assured. The book tackles women's struggles with self-doubt and the realities of workplace dynamics. To build it out, I used the Lean Canvas framework and focused on simplicity and economy of force to validate market fit. Not just for the book itself, but for the premium services tied to it. By Module 2, Sprint 12, the focus shifted to testing assuredbook.com, the landing page. We ran comprehension tests with three groups: book buyers, service buyers, and what we call empowered insiders. The results confirmed that the page delivers a clear and compelling value proposition. It communicates the core messages of workplace empowerment and confidence building effectively, while also pointing to where we can optimize for better engagement and stronger conversions across each audience. A portion of this assessment will pick up from where we left off on the welcome landing page and talk about what you're looking at here is the strategic foundation behind every experiment we run. This isn't about micro tactics like button colors or subject lines. It's about testing the core assumption that three very different audiences can be brought into one ecosystem to solve the problem of women's career transformation. That's what the rubric calls an experiment of strategic importance. And it directly addresses the need to show our experiments come from a prioritized, genuine challenge. At the center is the JTBD problem statement. Around it, you'll see the problem breakdown with doubt percentages: 25% for content advocates, 25% for individual women, and 50% for corporate leaders. These are our proxy metrics of buying intent. They're not arbitrary. They're hypotheses about resistance levels we expect to face. As those percentages shift down, intent goes up. That gives us something concrete to measure, track, and act on. The three hunches are where the real risk lives. First, will women accept that confidence is a skill set they can learn, not just a trait you're born with? Second, can we bridge the gap between belief and action? Will people engage, not just nod along? Third, do existing solutions fail because they ignore the emotional and relational dynamics that are central to women's experiences at work? If any one of these hunches is wrong, the business model collapses. That's exactly the level of strategic risk this assessment wants explored. Finally, the rationale ties it all together. We've laid out why traditional leadership programs fail, why surface-level fixes don't stick, and why emotional, relational, and systemic barriers have to be addressed as an integrated whole. That's not just assumption making. It's showing our thinking, our process, and the clear audit trail from problem to hypothesis to experiment design. Taken together, this framework shows we're not experimenting at random. We've surfaced the riskiest assumptions, set measurable proxies, and built a structure that connects problem understanding to the experiments themselves. That's what the assessment means by superlative strategic importance and strong reference to the experiment loop. Every element is connected, justified, and measurable. Tests 1 and 2. Iterating from earlier validation. The evolution of our risky assumption. Building on our Module 1. Sprint 8 assessment, where we discovered that opting in and actually contributing are two very different beasts. I refined my core risky assumption. I had already validated initial interest. Nearly 50 women were actively reading chapters through our book funnel delivery system. But I learned that engagement not just opt-in, was the true metric. Whether women are actually reading, responding, and investing their time, because that's the only proof this solution truly meets a struggle worth solving. The risk evolved from whether people would engage at all to whether we could scale that engagement efficiently across different audience segments. Traditional publishers expect new authors like Jodi to demonstrate they can activate their network to drive at least 4,000 book sales in the first 6 months. My earlier work proved we could get true believers in the Eric Hoffer sense, but the new test was whether this could scale beyond our immediate network to build the pipeline of 50-plus credible endorsements that represent marketing best practice for nonfiction launches. My refined hypothesis. Our earlier LinkedIn efforts proved the channel's efficiency. Was LinkedIn an efficient use of force? Absolutely, but also revealed constraints. From my 30,000 plus connections, only 18% were actually women, which required careful filtering. I also identified distinct segments, especially the empowered insiders, who valued being contributors rather than passive consumers, with motivations that were less transactional, more communal. Based on those learnings, my refined hypothesis for test 1 and 2 was, if I run targeted LinkedIn campaigns with our validated tech stack, BookFunnel for audio ebook delivery, deepfeedback.ai for structured surveys, but segment the approach between my curated 485 female contacts and Jodi's 2,500 connections from women's professional groups, I can identify which segment converts better from interest to advocacy. I wasn't testing if LinkedIn works. We already knew it does. I was testing how to optimize it for different audience segments. The experiment design, building on proven elements. Tests 1 and 2 weren't starting from scratch. They built on everything we had already validated. We knew from earlier work that most of our readers prefer audiobooks, so both campaigns used the BookFunnel system that could deliver both audio and ebook chapters. We'd learned that personalized outreach through trusted networks and valuable free content could overcome the typical resistance to pre-launch material. The innovation was in the parallel structure. Test 1 targeted my carefully filtered 485 female contacts. The refined list, after discovering the 18% gender ratio issue. Test 2 targeted Jodi's 2,500 connections from women's groups, representing the broader women in business segment we had identified as receptive. Both used identical content and messaging, with voice DMs for authenticity, followed by text follow-ups. This was about understanding which path could scale: depth through curated advocates, or breadth through aligned communities. The parallel structure was designed to reveal not just conversion rates, but conversion quality. Who moves from reader to advocate to eventual purchaser. Let's focus on test 1 for a few minutes. We'll walk through how we ran this test and the problems that we found. Before we move to the next screen, note that there are only 485 people in Dorian's audience. You're about to find out why. We thought initially that my connections, I have a ton of them, would be leverageable. Not. We covered a bit why in a previous assessment, so I won't go into those details. We pivoted pretty quickly to Jodi. We exported the lists into LA Growth Machine for automation. We didn't have to stand up any mail servers for this, as we sent directly into LinkedIn. Using voice messaging, which worked much better for Jodi than myself, what you're seeing in the flow diagram is our LinkedIn outreach campaign architecture for Dorian's 485 female contacts. A carefully orchestrated sequence designed to maximize engagement while maintaining authenticity. This isn't just mass messaging. It's a strategic, multi-touch system that adapts based on prospect behavior. The campaign begins with a webhook trigger that initiates profile visits, a subtle but important first touch that often prompts reciprocal profile views, warming the connection before any direct outreach. From there, the system branches into parallel paths, sending personalized connection requests with custom messages, following up with InMail for existing connections, and deploying voice messages to break through the noise of typical LinkedIn outreach. Each action is timed and sequenced to feel natural rather than automated, with built-in delays and conditional logic that responds to prospect engagement. The sophistication here demonstrates what the rubric calls leveraging whatever resources you have. We're using automation tools strategically to achieve enterprise-level outreach efficiency without enterprise budgets. The branching logic shows we're not just broadcasting. We're creating responsive conversations at scale. The statistics tell a compelling story of market validation. From our 485 targeted leads, we successfully contacted 330, a 68% contact rate that shows both the quality of our list curation and the effectiveness of our multi-channel approach. This was not luck. It was the result of the filtering and refinement work I had done earlier to identify the 18% of my connections who were actually women in our target demographic. The 67 replies represent a 20% response rate from those contacted, crushing the industry standard of 1 to 7% for cold LinkedIn outreach. These are not vanity metrics. They validate our hypothesis that our target market cares enough about this content to engage. More importantly, these replies are not just casual acknowledgments. They are expressions of interest from carefully qualified prospects who have been warmed through multiple touch points. These numbers tie directly to our proxy metrics for buying intent. The 20% reply rate maps to our target metric of greater than or equal to 10% I'm interested responses, in fact doubling the goal. Even more strategically, the quality of these 67 engaged prospects builds the pipeline for the next crucial metric: conversion to testimonials. If even 30% of these respondents progress to providing testimonials, which is consistent with our historical rate from earlier experiments, we will generate approximately 20 endorsements from this segment alone. What we didn't know at the time was how people wanted to give testimonials. Jody's campaign architecture took a deliberately different path from my multi-touch system. Working with 2,500 leads from her female list 1, women already engaged in professional groups aligned with our mission, we deployed a streamlined sequence. The flow is focused. Profile, visits to warm the connection, followed by targeted InMail messages and strategic follow-ups. This was not a simpler campaign because we lacked sophistication. It was streamlined because Jody's audience required a different approach. These women were already part of communities discussing professional development and women's advancement. They did not need as many touch points to understand our value proposition. They were already primed for the conversation. This strategic differentiation demonstrates what the rubric calls minimal design to deliver maximum learning. We were not over-engineering when a direct approach would suffice. From 2,500 targeted leads, we contacted 978, a 39% contact rate. While lower than my 68%, this validated our hypothesis about audience segments. Jody's broader list included women at various stages of their career journey, not just the curated advocates in my network. The 39% contact rate still exceeded industry benchmarks and proved we could scale beyond hand-selected connections. What matters most is the conversion. Of the 978 contacted, 251 replied, a 25% response rate that exceeded my 20%. This higher conversion from contact to response revealed something critical. When we reached women in professional communities, they were more likely to engage. They were actively seeking solutions to the challenges we address. This isn't just about numbers. It's about which channels deliver what. My network gives quality and credibility, advocates with minimal doubt. Jody's network delivers scale and higher engagement, women already seeking solutions. The signals are clear. Target greater than or equal to 10%. I'm interested. Actual 25%. Target greater than or equal to 5%. Downloads. Actual 20.75%. Target greater than or equal to 50. Survey responses. Actual 71. The kicker, Jody's audience downloaded at 20.75% versus my 8.06%. Women in professional communities don't just click, they act. That's a critical go-to-market insight. And the leverage is massive. We're borrowing trust from communities where credibility is already built. No 7 to 10 touch points, no expensive nurturing. Cost per engaged lead is near zero, and the scale potential is exponential. There are thousands of these groups waiting. You can read the progression results. They're nice, but we still had a problem. In Module 1, Sprint 8, I laid out the core challenge of getting active engagement and feedback from beta readers. The problem was not getting people to opt in. That part was relatively straightforward. The problem was getting them to actually contribute, which turned out to be a very different beast. To make it work, I had to engineer a full tech stack. Simplicity officially left the building during this phase. It took a series of trials to land on the right combination of tools. I ended up stitching together LA Growth Machine, Apply Twitter, Google Sheets, Make.com, OpenRouter, and CHA TGPT just to build a clean, targeted list. Even then, getting women to actually read and respond to chapter drafts required a whole other layer. I had to ensure that BookFunnel could deliver both audio and ebook chapters, while DeepFeedback.ai acted as the AI-powered survey engine to capture structured, actionable feedback. By that point, as I said at the time, simplicity was laughing at us. Between email systems, CRM tracking, delivery platforms, and the AI survey layer, the process was anything but lightweight. The point of all this effort was clear: to turn passive readers into engaged contributors. Structured, actionable feedback is the raw material for credible endorsements and testimonials. And those testimonials are the currency that makes a nonfiction launch viable. We knew what we had to do. We had to reach back out to the people Jody and I were having conversations with and ask them again to come back to the site if they wanted to give a testimonial, which became TestRef3 for AssuredBook.com. With a redesigned testimonial or in-depth interview feedback page, we are getting over 50% responses. And now for something different. To make this simple, we aren't getting much sign-up love for DeepFeedback.ai, and it makes me worry. Let's go through it. With Deep Feedback, I applied the same rigor the rubric calls superlative. The JTBD problem statement framed an experiment of strategic importance, testing whether founders and product teams truly need a AI-powered synthesis to cut through the chaos of customer feedback. If that assumption fails, the entire model fails. 90% doubt across 3 segments showed extreme skepticism, far higher than AssuredBook's numbers. That doubt was not weakness but honesty, and it became my proxy for buying intent. Every time deep feedback turns messy transcripts and vague surveys into clear signals, we can measure doubt reduction as a direct indicator of purchase likelihood. Founders make costly decisions on biased interviews and gut feel because generic tools don't deliver signals. Teams avoid interviews out of embarrassment and vague outcomes. Pricing is anecdotal, with no real way to test sensitivity. Any of these, if wrong, could invalidate the venture, which is the level of risk worth testing. This was about process thinking. I connected the emotional, fear of building the wrong thing, the practical, messy data, vague themes, and the business, failed launches. That exhaustiveness is what the rubric demands. And it wasn't theoretical. In Sprint 5, I'd already scraped 100 plus threads and 5,000 comments, proving the pain was real. Fast. AI-powered synthesis was not a feature idea. It was the core wedge born from validated research. However, sign-up traction isn't happening yet. Let's dig deeper. I'm not going to cover test ref 1. We have a small design team, 2 guys, who could only focus on AssuredBook in the last bunch of weeks. They haven't gotten to building out the test landing pages for deep feedback yet. So this one, test ref 1, is on hold for now. We focused on test 2 and then test 4. Our core risky assumption was simple and brutal. Founders will care enough about synthesis pain to try an AI tool built by a peer. The risk was not just whether they felt the pain, we knew they did, but whether trust in a fellow student could overcome skepticism toward an unproven tool. In the one-day founder help channel, several had mentioned using Polfish, which doesn't solve synthesis. My hypothesis: if I step into that live conversation and offer a free trial code, founders will test deep feedback. This was not cold outreach, but direct engagement with people already naming the exact problem we solve. I targeted 5 founders from that thread, DMing them with deep feedback as a complement to Polfish. The free code removed friction, while the core test remained intact. Will they care enough to try? This was minimal design, maximum learning. The experiment was simple. I DM'd the group conversation. 5 participants, 2 users signed up. Great. We then expanded for scale. Our core risky assumption: founders will care enough about qualitative synthesis pain to try an AI tool created by a fellow student. This is genuinely risky because it tests whether peer-to-peer credibility can overcome the typical enterprise software trust barriers. We're not an established vendor with case studies and testimonials. We're a student with a hypothesis. The risk is that our student status will be seen as lacking credibility rather than as authentic shared context. So we turn to TextOwl to extract information in order to message them. I ran a large-scale test of the peer-to-peer hypothesis by targeting 1,146 one-day students through Slack DMs, powered by a TextOwl workflow that looked simple but carried real sophistication. The sequence warm contacts with a profile view, sent a personalized auto message, and automatically captured responders into the CRM for follow-up. This was resource leverage at its best. Automation that mimicked natural human interaction, created recognition before outreach, and ensured no lead slipped through the cracks. What normally takes a sales team, we pulled off with $29 a month in tools. This part worked great. The numbers told a clear story. Our 19.8% view rate missed badly against the 80% target, but the 51.5% response rate crushed expectations, and the 146% click-through showed multiple clicks per user, proof of serious evaluation, not casual interest. The miss revealed the real issue. Slack DMs have low visibility. The insight is that when people do see the message, they engage deeply. Our next iteration will split by behavior. Emailing the 919 who never saw the DM as a primary channel, and nurturing the 227 who engage through follow-up. The hypothesis now evolves from, can we reach students, to which channel sequence works best by engagement state. We will run this next campaign once the email server warms up for that many sends. What you're seeing are 2 full iterations of our Google Ads experiment using GetNaira.ai to test whether enterprise buyers are actively searching for AI-powered user research and whether we can capture them at sustainable economics. This wasn't about copy tweaks or bid hacks. It was about validating search intent. We ran 10 broad match keywords across the US, Canada, and UK at $10 per day. August, on the left, gave a spectacular failure that taught us everything. 2,357 impressions, 225 clicks, 9.55% CTR, 3 times industry average, 31 cents CPC, and 0 conversions. Session recordings revealed the truth. The survey broke on mobile, 60% of traffic. Page load was 10+ seconds, and visitors searching AI user interviews got a clunky form instead of value. The demand was real. The execution killed us. What happened? The first thing we did was check Google Analytics to see if Genira.ai was telling the truth about conversion rates. It was, both in August and now. 80% of the users who came in through mobile. Our mobile response was horrible. 29 frigging clicks and 1 page. Users weren't getting any responsiveness from our site. We didn't pivot away from a channel delivering 3 times industry engagement. We are fixing the infrastructure. Mobile responsiveness, load time down to 1.8 seconds, survey above the fold. The September relaunch proved it. 375 impressions, 101 clicks, a 26.9% CTR, 9 times industry average, 1 in 4 searchers clicking through. CPC rose to 60 cents, but the improvement from 9.5% to 27% CTR makes it clear. The bottleneck was execution, not demand. The learning is strategic. Search intent exists. Our messaging lands, and conversion requires dedicated landing pages per keyword cluster. At $10 per day, we're extracting insights most startups pay $10,000 for. Every click teaches vocabulary, every bounce reveals friction, and the path forward is clear. Persevere, build targeted landing pages, and scale only after hitting 3% conversions. This isn't just ads, it's building the market playbook.